Hi folks, you're with Tass, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about these various organisations, United Nations, various NGOs that get the gig, well paid from the looks of it, of auditing and observing and checking on the how free and fair third world, shithole, dictatorship type areas, the ones where warlords and goons are running amok, how free and fair the elections are. Now, this observer I met some days ago, actually, one of those sort of social gatherings with some people we know and having a cup of coffee and everything, and sometimes you get to meet some interesting people, and you get to meet some morons too, but among them some interesting people. And so this guy was an observer in a third world country, and but he was talking about, and as far as I can tell, given I also saw an article from this NGO expressing a sentiment about what free and fair elections are and the role of voting. And because I saw the two together, just on the conversation with him, I wasn't going to bother with doing a video, but I sort of thought about it a bit more and figured, well, this is actually quite significant. So, because it expresses an attitude that these people have about the role of democracy and voting in the world going forward, how they perceive equity and equity outcomes and the role of voting within that pursuit of equity outcomes. So he's in this third world country, and he's talking about the corruption, how they'll appear in the middle of the night with all these fake votes that they filled out, and they'll just stuff them in election boxes, or they'll just appear at 3 o'clock in the morning with a truckload of votes, and then just take away the votes that were there, and then just add another lot in, and it's blatant fixing and rigging of an election, and they're seeing this, and so they're observing it and watching it, and to me that would be, well, isn't that a clear case of it's not a free and fair election? Isn't that a clear case that the outcome of the election is fraudulent and doesn't represent the will of the people at all? Now, this is not a country that's got a tradition of democracy. The amount of votes that have been taken over the last 50, 60 years have been few. There have been coup d'etats and virtual civil wars and martial law and all sorts of things like that. So it's they're not out there having regular free and fair and clean elections at all. So there's no tradition of that, and there's no history of in this country or understanding of elections and civic participation and so on. So we need to accept that, but there's a powerful landed interest, and agriculture is the big industry there. And in this agriculture, there's a small elite of huge landholders, and they make obscene profits. They live like kings, and they're able to really charge whatever they like for it's a monopoly, or cartel oligopoly for farm produce, food, and so they can charge the people. And the elites think that the way to keep the people under control is to make sure that the people have no money in their pockets, that every cent is extracted from them to buy the essentials of life. Now, if we look at the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab saying to Western citizens, you'll own nothing and be happy, it's very clear that we're moving towards that as well and being forced into it by the World Economic Forum. Look at the increase in the cost of all the essentials of life, whereas the non-essentials have stayed relatively accessible in terms of price increase. Say you look at the televisions, for example, flat screen TVs and the like. You look at the increase in cost of those compared to, say, the increase in cost of things like milk or bread or the essentials of life, rent and so on. So anyway, so this guy's observing all this corruption in the election process, all these fake ballots and everything being brought in the small hours of the morning, and the real votes being taken out back and burned, and the fake votes. He's observing all this in this third world country, but he's unconcerned by that. Now just think about it. His job, he's been hired, or the outfit he works for has been hired to observe the election and then report back and say, is it a free and fair election, or is it somewhat free and fair, or is it all bullshit and all corrupt? That they're required to report back, and he's one of the key observers in this, one of the bigger electoral centres. So you think he'd be, and he's mentioning this quite casually. No, the 3 o'clock in the morning they brought these, we could tell that they just put them all in new boxes, and there's all that sort of stuff, and blatant corruption and vote rigging. But he's not particularly concerned, because I sort of said, well, this must have really concerned you, given that's your job to audit this sort of the election process. Now he's saying, well, no, it's not really, because we've achieved some other things in this society that more than offset the corrupt election. Well, what do you mean? Well, we've got LGBTQ and trans people and lesbians and this and that and black lesbians and one-legged son. We've got all these. Now, bear in mind, this is a dirt poor country where you walk across dead bodies in the street, but they're concerned about whether or not there's a lesbian somewhere who has rights, and this is more concerning to them than a corrupt election. So he's arguing that the marginalized people, as he perceives it, ideologically, that the lesbians and the trans people and so on, they actually, some of them, they don't think all of them, but some of them actually got to vote, and they're citizens of the country, so why not? Some of them actually got to vote. So as he and his colleagues said, they're breaking down barriers of discrimination. So if even one black lesbian gets to vote, then that's more than enough to offset corruption where all the votes are fake. Okay, all right, then, well, that's an interesting way of looking at things, but my view sort of came back, and I have got to do this softly because he's ideological, so if I question him too intensely, he'll just back off and clam up or say, you're Hitler, I don't have to talk to you, something like that. So I've got to go sort of carefully on this. But saying to him, well, if the vote is fair and free and fair and not corrupt, then politicians will be encouraged to put forward policies that the people will vote for. Politicians will come up who have policies that the people want to vote for. And that'll automatically have the effect of breaking up the elite stranglehold on power. And that makes government accountable. And so free and fair elections, secret ballot, that's critical to making the changes and taking the corruption out of the system. And once you get that, then once you've achieved that, then the marginalized people will automatically be brought in as they are legal citizens, and observance of the law and so on will take precedence over corruption and cronyism and so on. Sort of shrugs a bit. I'm not even sure he was interested in that sort of thought process. It takes too long. It's too hard, and why do it? And you can't be bothered. And why don't we just take the quick fix and let them do their corrupt stuff in return for letting a black lesbian cast a vote somewhere? And this is, we've achieved something socially. This is social advancement of some sort, and that's good. And so we don't need to worry about the corrupt elections. What? So anyway, that was sort of one, and this was sort of reflected pretty much in the article that the NGO he works for wrote, that in the overall scheme of things, getting a better treatment of trans people or black lesbians in this dirt poor third world shithole is really more important than free and fair elections, the rule of law, due legal process, or any of these things. Now, we're seeing that same ideological attitude in the West now, and I've spoken to people that said it's quite acceptable if 10 innocent men go to prison, provided we get one rapist, we nail one of the rapists, and if we've 10 innocent men go to prison for that, then that's a collateral damage price well worth paying. So we need to understand the ideology that's feeding into all of these social changes that we're seeing, and that are being forced upon us, by the way. And so this guy reflected that as indeed the NGO. Now, the NGO he works for, interestingly, was heavily involved in carrying votes that were outside of the chain of custody during one of the US elections. And so when you're transporting votes, and you have to have a chain of custody so that the votes, 10,000 votes are handed to person A, the same 10,000 to person B until they get to the collation or the counting centre. Well, this NGO is particularly involved with moving votes around, and multiple instances here of the chain of custody being broken. So this is an activist NGO. Now, another thing that was interesting was that as this guy, and I think he reflects the views of the NGO, which is again a prominent NGO. He said that elections that are free and fair are divisive, because you allow people whose views you don't agree with to have a voice in the democratic electoral process. Well, yeah, that's called democracy, you fucking moron. But to him, it's not. Because if you allow people you don't agree with, the Nazis, if you allow them to have a voice and a vote, then that's destabilizing, as he sees it, and it is the threat to marginalized people. Therefore, if you have a rigged or fixed vote in this third world country, if you have a rigged or fixed vote, then this is a good thing, because it unifies, as in gives the appearance of, unifies the country, and the black lesbian gets a vote, and that the voices of the Nazis are suppressed. Now, the ideological thing of anyone who doesn't agree with this is a Nazi, and this sort of thing, therefore they can be shut down, therefore they don't have legal rights. This is again creeping very much into Western rule of law, administration of law, jurisprudence, the process, the due legal process in courts. And so he probably is reflecting the view widely held, as I see it at least, by these NGO, United Nations, and increasingly I think the ideologues in and around the Democrat Party in the United States, that they're that really the social unity can be achieved by lies, propaganda, deceit, treachery, and not allowing the democratic process play out as it was originally designed. And this was kind of very sobering thought, that accountability and these sort of things, they just don't matter. They're not relevant. Any form of merit is just not relevant. What we want is equity, and that's what we need to achieve. And in order to achieve that, we can't allow things to get in the way, like the law or like voting or like these things. That they just have to be treated as the obstacles that they are to creating the paradise that these people seem to think is just around the corner. You've been a Tacitus today. You're a Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.